Hey folks, Jim Dunaway from The Next Round. It's time to look back and enjoy a week of Southeastern Conference football as we talk about what we saw in the field. And as always, we're excited to be partnered with our friends at Cowin Equipment. And they'd like to partner up with your company for all your heavy equipment needs. Visit everyone over at Cowin on their website at cowin.com to find out more about how you can save with your heavy equipment solution, from rental and new equipment sales to superior service and parts. It's all right there with our friends at Cowin Equipment. Visit cowin.com. That's cowin.com. Now let's check out the action.
You can't watch Alabama and Miami and not just be blown away by Bryce Young to start with. He is, as we do this show now live on a Monday, he is the betting favorite in Las Vegas to win the Heisman Trophy. It's a long way. Those odds change on a weekly basis. But from what you saw from Sam Howell, from what you saw from DJ Uyunglele, from what you saw from every other contender,
Spencer Rattler,
yep, Bryce Young in his first start looked at head.
It looks like easy money, fellas.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like he's in the lead, and for a good reason.
A couple of things. Manny Diaz in a big game is what you get.
But you can't. I mean, Manny was throwing 5, 6, 7 blitzers at him, and Alabama's
I'm just saying,
O-line.
going into the weekend, one of the things. I mean, Alabama always wins these games, but Miami in big games, it hasn't worked out well.
Yeah.
Now Manny Diaz 1-5 against top 25s in his small, short 3-year tenure at Miami.
Threw a lot of speed, a lot of blitzes at the guy, and his numbers against the blitz in the first half, I think they were like 17 of 21, something like that. It was an enormous, great numbers against the blitz in the first half from Bryce Young, and he dialed it up, and hats off to that offensive line.
Well, I actually thought their best path to defensive victory is one you can't really play the whole game. They had the most success when they were dropping 8 on him. Rush 3, drop 8. You can't do that for an entire game, obviously. It's not going to work. But that was the one time where Bryce Young struggled just a little bit, was when they kept dropping 8. I mean, it's hard to find an open receiver when you got 5 eligible receivers and 8 defenders, right? And to Bryce's credit, he wasn't just pulling it down and running every time. He was still trying to find a receiver.
That's right.
So I didn't see the beginning of the game, I guess because Oklahoma-Tulane was still on.
You had to go to ESPN News.
This
is the annual time where I find where ESPN News is.
But, I was so caught up in that game that I'm watching that, and when it goes to Alabama, I mean, it was deja vu. I said, last week there's no way they could score 48 points per game again. They only got 44, by the way. But I said, you're not going to see this Alabama team like we've seen the last couple of years where they automatically go down and score within the first 2 or 3 minutes. And that's exactly what they did.
That's exactly what you saw.
I mean, the first play I saw was Mechie going in over the pylon, and I was like, is this a replay from something that I haven't seen? But it's deja vu. It's crazy. It's a complete machine. 6 players taken in the first round, no problem.
I mean, the game is just it's 17-0 before you can blink, and you're like, Miami's out of this game. I mean, this is what Alabama does in these this is the last, at least on the schedule, the last of the neutral site made for TV preseason opening games. Alabama's legacy in those games will be, I mean, if you just take that slice of college football, one of the most dominant legacies we've ever seen, they've just destroyed teams in these
find
games.
It's hard to believe that Miami offensive line will be one of the best offensive lines they go against. And you saw how they dominated.
Are you sure?
I mean, look, 168 career starts. I mean, it's a ton of experience.
Well, if that's the best offensive line Alabama's going to face,
it will be one of the better ones. How about that?
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the better ones.
That shows you how good that Alabama defense is.
11 neutral site games to what Brown is talking about, okay? Here you go. 11 neutral site games. Alabama has outscored their opponents 425 to 141. And these are not, the Akrons and Bowling Greens.
No, it's made for TV stuff.
This is USC. This is Wisconsin. This is Michigan. This is Virginia Tech a couple of times. This is Clemson. This is West Virginia.
Yeah.
This is, did I say Wisconsin?
You did.
Miami. I mean, these are the made-for-TV openers. 11 neutral site games, 425 to 141.
Yeah, I mean, they've just dominated these games.
Well, and when you think of Atlanta and an SEC game, you think big games, right? They've won 15 consecutive games in Atlanta. Do you guys realize the last time Alabama lost a game in Atlanta?
Tebow?
Yeah, 2008.
For Auburn, the competition was Akron, and LT had told you that Akron was going to be a very bad team. But when you come out and you beat bad teams the way you're supposed to, 60-10, you didn't see that in all the cases around the country.
Yeah.
Right?
Hey, look, if you're going to play a bad team, you might as well make them look like what they really are. And just to put in perspective, Akron has lost 22 of their last 23. Do you know what their one win is?
They beat Bowling Green.
You got it.
Yes.
December.
Had to tie into last week's theme.
This Bowling Green team, they're getting 14.5 this weekend at home against South Alabama, and South Alabama will run them off the field.
Whoa. Bowling Green's catching 2 touchdowns?
In a hook. South Alabama at home.
No, they're giving up 2 touchdowns in a hook. I said catching.
Yeah, no, they're catching 2. Yeah,
They're catching
South
2?
Alabama's giving up 14.5.
So South Alabama on the road at Bowling Green's a 14.5.
And trust me, it is a good play.
South Alabama go Jags all day.
Yeah. Anyway, that's how bad Akron is too. But Dunaway, you're right. I mean, look, if you're going to play a bad team, go out, lay 60, get a little confidence in this new Mike Bobo offense. I mean, Bo Nix. I mean, the numbers are the numbers. 20 of 22. Yeah. I mean, that's the highest completion percentage in the history of Auburn football. And a guy that we dogged out could never hit that 60% completion mark.
Well, he did, and. Look, I knew this would happen. I tweeted that, look, this is an awful opponent. Auburn is going to play much better opponents than Akron. But Bo Nix looks infinitely more comfortable in this offense.
Right,
and of course, what I got from that was, it's Akron. I literally said that in the tweet. I know it's Akron. Akron's awful. But Bo Nix was under center. Akron didn't put Bo Nix under center. Brian Harson's offense did. Bo Nix was in the pistol. Akron didn't put Auburn in the pistol. Brian Harson's offense did.
And then the other big game in the country, and we'll get to all of them, and we'll do best and worst of the weekend coming up. But Georgia beats Clemson, and the AP poll, when it comes out, I expect Georgia to be number 2 in the country. I expect it to be Alabama 1, Georgia 2. Anybody got a problem with Alabama 1,
no.
Georgia 2?
No. I think Ohio State could possibly be 2, but I agree with you. I think it'd be Georgia.
I'd have them 3.
I think once the Oklahoma game went final, you knew the winner of Clemson-Georgia was going to be number 2. Oklahoma will get punished for their performance against Tulane. So you knew the winner of Clemson, no matter how that game went, Clemson-Georgia winner was number 2.
Yeah. Fitting, I think, and I read, I forget where I read it, but somebody said fitting for a Kirby Smart game. It was perfect for him. The only touchdown scored in the game was a Christopher Smith pick 6. Perfectly read, great, well-coached, great film room study by Christopher Smith to jump that route, pick off DJ's pass, take it to the house, and that's the only touchdown you get between these 2 powerhouses. It was 2 really good defenses, you think. You wonder where the offenses are. But Georgia, at least defensively, looked like one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, look, we knew Georgia was going to have a great defense. I thought Clemson's defense was going to be much improved. It was, with 9 returning starters. That was kind of the Achilles heel, at least when they got to the college football playoff last year. I thought Clemson's offensive line would be improved. Watching DJ against Notre Dame last year, he looked to have a little mobility. He looked to have a little touch. He's throwing a flat ball right now. There's no mobility. The offensive line is completely awful. I don't know how you fix this if you're Clemson. I mean, the good news is...
I'll tell you how you fix it. You play an ACC schedule.
That's it. You're going to be favored. But I do think watching NC State on Thursday night, they've got the speed, the ability to run the football, and they attack defensively. I think they've got a legit shot at beating Clemson based on what I saw on Saturday night. Clemson's offensive line, as good as Georgia is, that is a bad offensive line.
It is. And they didn't adjust. They just never really adjusted. And I don't know, man. I don't coach football, so I don't know. But when you watch that game and you see what Georgia is doing, it felt like Clemson just never adjusted to what Georgia was doing. Those linebackers, how often did those linebackers come free on a blitz?
Jeff says, best of the weekend, Mackenzie Milton's comeback. The worst, is a tie between LSU and Vandy. We haven't touched on LSU UCLA yet. And there's many, many things that we take pride of in the Southeastern Conference. And one is, if we do play on the West Coast, they may occasionally scheme us and beat us in speed, but they're never going to push us around.
No.
UCLA pushed LSU around. And they beat them in speed, too, but they pushed them around.
We were sitting here on Friday talking about that game, and I just, the logical side was like LSU, it's the SEC, it's the Pac-12. By the way, do you guys realize before that game on Saturday, the last time a Pac-12 team has beaten an SEC-ranked team?
A Pac-12 team over an SEC ranked team. This sounds crazy to say. Does it go all the way back to 2000 UCLA over Alabama?
I'm going to say Oregon over Tennessee at Autzen.
It was UCLA over Tennessee in 2008.
Oh, wait. Okay.
Yeah, so it's been 13 years. But I got up Saturday morning and breaking down games, and look, I only had a 4 and 5 day on Saturday, so it wasn't a great day, but I talked myself into UCLA, and the reason I did, I just started thinking in the coaching matchup. Chip Kelly is going to outcoach Ed Orgeron. He's got 2 new coordinators, and from game 1 to game 2, I think UCLA is going to be better. UCLA is pretty legitimate. I don't know if they've got a perimeter threat, but their ability to run the football, and that's what Chip Kelly's great offenses have been. And for them to be able, and look, and I know LSU's defense wasn't any good last year. It doesn't look much better this year.
I don't think it's improved.
But UCLA looked physical up front on both sides of the football.
And by the way, it's probably not for today, but there's an uncomfortable conversation. Not uncomfortable for us. We're going to have about, is Derek Stingley really as good as everybody says Derek Stingley is?
He was so good his freshman year, but
did
last
you see him
year,
Saturday night?
Yeah, got picked on a little bit at times the other night. And Scott Rabelais writes today down in The Advocate, and it's part of the morning rounds that you can get every morning at nextroundlive.com. Just some quick links to some of the top stories out there. He says this loss brings into question Ed Orgeron's future. So there's a hometown paper after one game bringing into question the future of Ed Orgeron, and they point out in the story, LSU insiders say, Jimbo Fisher would be the first person they would call, and everyone around college football says this is why Texas A&M did what they did last week in case LSU did what they did at UCLA.
Well, that's going to have to be a hefty buyout at this point.
Yeah, but again, I mean, if LSU really wants them, wants Jimbo Fisher, they can spend $11 million. You can always top Texas A&M. You can go back and forth. It just depends on the job Jimbo wants.
Yeah. I mean, I want to say we're a little too premature in talking about this, but keep in mind the way Ed Orgeron got this job was they fired a coach, not Les Miles, after an Auburn loss, not because they feared Les Miles was about to go 4-8. They feared Les Miles was going to be an 8 or 9 win coach, and it was going to be another situation where they were at the end of the year, and he hadn't been awful, but he hadn't been great, and we're stuck in the middle. And I think that's where LSU feels like they are with Ed Orgeron right now.
I've got a weird feeling. You've got 8 losable games coming up.
There's no doubt.
We talked about you're behind the 8 ball if you lose this game. Now they're behind the 8 ball with this SEC West schedule. This is probably a 6-6 team based on what I saw. Outside of Butte, they've got no weapons. They averaged 2 yards per carry Saturday night against UCLA. Last year was 3.3 yards. You have to improve on that. They're not going to be able to run the football this year.